Meredith Goldstein, welcome from
Thank
Love
you
Letters,
for having me.
The Globe. We were just off air discussing our love-hate relationship with Superman, I guess. I know you love him, Moose.
There ain't no hate. It's all love on this side.
Meredith and I have the same feeling on it, where it's like, he's too goody two-shoes. Have you ever heard it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war?
No.
You never heard that saying?
No.
So, okay, a lot of people, even in society now, you have a lot of people who are like, I'm a lover, I'm not a fighter, I'm peaceful, I'm this, I'm that. No, they say that, but really what they're saying is, I'm a wimp. It's like, if I don't like to fight. No, you cannot fight. There's a difference between not liking to fight and not being able to fight. If somebody came and bullied you and you said, I don't like to fight, you're still going to get bullied and they're going to get what they want. Whereas if you're somebody who has that ability to defend yourself, that you have that little bit of evil in you, but you control it. That, to me, that's the whole, like, it's better to be a warrior and a gardener, a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war. That is what I like about Superman, that they never utilized in his storylines, that he easily could have come out and been like, hey, guys, at the end of the day, I could smoke you all, so you better listen to me. But he was always the golly gee, good guy.
We will see what James Gunn is going to do this summer.
Yeah, if he might change it up.
He might. I mean, it's really funny because every now and then, I don't know if you ever think this, I'll be like, maybe I wouldn't be as creative or like driven when I am those things if I'd had like a perfect childhood. Like, or even like some of my best like work that I'm most proud of happens after I get dumped, right? Like when I was younger. And the thing about Superman is like, he had really good parents, like you said. And like, what happens if you grow up really in like the most healthy way? Like, can you be interesting? And I'd like to think it's true, right? I want all of us to be like loved appropriately and grow up well. But Superman as like a character, like, I don't want to make out with him. I mean, this is how I love DC Comics and I take it very seriously, but there is a part of me that's like, which of these heroes am I most likely to want to make out with? And he is not the one I want to make out with.
So is Green Lantern higher on your rank list than that?
I don't know about Green Lantern. I mean, I'm a Batman girl. I'm a Batman the Animated Series girl.
Yeah.
I feel strongly about. In 1989, whatever age I was pretty young, but old enough to be like, oh, Michael Keaton as Batman. I locked in, which is not many people's Batman. I know most people are a Christian Bale person.
Is that your Batman, Michael Keaton?
Michael Keaton's my guy. I think there was also something about, I mean, I think he's a very good actor and he gave it a lot of depth, and he's also like not some big, hunk of a guy, right? So it's like a guy you could know. And he just seemed emotionally unavailable. And I was like, emotionally unavailable, that's the guy for me, right? Brooding in his house. So, and I have continued, actually, it's funny, years and years later, when the movie Spotlight was being filmed at the Globe, right? So you've got all these people, they're like in the Globe, Mark Ruffalo, all these people. I didn't care, don't care. Rachel McAdams seems lovely, don't care. Michael Keaton, I avoided. I would hear he's down the hall and I would go in the other direction because I was like, I can't emotionally handle it. I will blow it, and I love him too much because he is Batman to me. But I love talking about these superheroes because like what works for you tells us a lot about who. I was never really an X-Men person going to the Marvel side, and I'm really starting to get.
I love it.
Please, we don't have these conversations.
Okay,
often.
well, right now I'm doing Legion for the first time. The show, and that's a really complicated show that makes me feel like I keep needing to rewatch parts. Right? I'm like, am I getting this right? But all of these shows, oh my god. Well, and this is where I will tell you that the best thing that ever happened to me a few years ago, which is that I made this friend. Her name is Sarah Farazan. She's local to Boston. She's a young adult writer. She writes like middle grade and young adult novels. She was hired by DC Comics to write a graphic novel in the DC universe. Like, they like books about like other things happening in Gotham. Like, oh, well, Batman's doing this. Like, kind of like Birds of Prey, where it's like, he's not even in this one, right? And so she writes this story about Killer Croc that they loved, and they published it. And it's called My Buddy Killer Croc. And the book is this kid who basically falls in with Killer Croc because he's like a wrestler, right? So he falls in with the scene. And as this book is coming together, she said, I'm going to give you a gift. And this friend is somebody I watched all of Batman the Animated Series with, Lois and Clark. We're doing Smallville right now. We've done X-Men. We've done This is our project together as friends. We even did it in lockdown on Zoom. She shows me the book, the draft, and there is a Meredith character, an Aunt Meredith. Now, the kid has an Aunt Meredith. She is like a way hotter, younger, like she's like blonde and really tall with a ponytail, and she works for the Gotham newspaper. I was like, I'll never. But what's hilarious about this, what she explained is, Harley Quinn started as a animated series character, and then obviously has become massive, right? So she's like, technically, you are part of the canon of DC Comics. Not me, Aunt Meredith, who I think legally cannot be me. There will probably never be an interest in a minor character in a graphic novel that was made for middle schoolers.
You never know.
But I was like, technically, what if Aunt Meredith is like a superhero who gets her own franchise? Unlikely, but possible. But she was very nice and got me like a page when the book was printed. But it's like the best thing ever.
Oh my God, that's on my bucket list now. I want somebody just to do a random character and base it on me.
Yeah, it's like and there he is on mic, and you're like, right, it just shows like my messy newspaper desk, which is like the Gotham Gazette and not really me. But I was like, technically, in the files of characters that have existed that are endorsed by DC Comics, there is a Meredith. And
there's those crazy hardcore comic book nerds where if there's a character who even resembles that in the Superman movie, they're going to be like, that's Aunt Meredith, or from the Killer Croc.
Clearly, that's Aunt Meredith from My Buddy Killer Croc, right? She's and there's one. She gives me one frame essentially where I talk to Batman, and I'm just looking at him, but it's not me because she looks great. I love that the artist was actually in Italy, and so she'd send these illustrations, and I was like, well, I don't know that anyone would believe that's me, but I'll take it. She's blonde and she exists.
That gesture.
It was a beautiful friendship gesture because we had, at that point, we had clocked in so many hours of TV. When you meet somebody, a new friend, and you realize you like the same cartoon from your childhood, and we are both like, at the time, single with no kids, I still have no kids, but we were like at the exact right point in our lives to be like, let's lean in. And every Sunday we would watch like 5 episodes of Batman the Animated Series while eating kettle corn. And I was like, I don't think this is what a person in their 40s is supposed to be doing, but I'm into it and I feel strongly about it. And actually just this past Saturday, we did a bunch of Smallville, and we had this conversation about Superman where I was like, I don't want to make out with this. Yeah. I don't understand what this is. And he's going to work for a newspaper and I still don't care.
Mm-hmm. Because you wrote books. How many people, just in life, how many interesting people do you know that are like, you know what? I grew up, my parents loved me, I graduated high school, I went to college, now I have my career. No, the most interesting people always have some sort of weird storyline in their life.
Yeah, it's you actually before off mic, we were talking about George Michael randomly, and there's a lot of the conversation today is random. And a few years ago, I had to write about Richard Marx's autobiography memoir. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Richard Marx, what's his most famous song? Right Here Waiting for You.
That's the only one. I'm sure I know more. That's the one that pops to my head.
Yeah, there's right. And he starts his book by saying, "I apologize in advance. I had a really good childhood."
Yeah, no,
he's like, "Get ready. This is about songwriting because my life is like really well adjusted." And I thought that was great that he knew.
Yeah,
he knew this was. There was no like, oh, and here's when I hit rock bottom. It was like, I've had wonderful support system. I've had a great experience in the music industry, and knowing that made it easier to read. But I do feel like. Yeah, Superman. I mean, then you start getting into Lex. Like when I watch these shows, I'm like, well, this is Batman, but different. But we're supposed to think he's the villain and he's not really doing anything super cool with the money. But yeah, I don't know.
Can I throw in just like my 2 cents? Like, okay, now, but here's the thing. Imagine though, when his journey begins post Smallville and he's working at the Daily Planet and he meets Lois and everything, he enters a whole phase of his life where all the lessons he learned, the comfort of his home in Kansas and everything is all gone. And he's in this new
small town boy in the big city
arena. Yep. Okay, small town boy in a big city, but you're right. If he wanted to in 2 seconds, the city could be under his foot. He is learning to deal with that, learning to deal with people. Then he meets this woman who's very confident, very like boom, 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 part of her career. Like she sees this 6-foot guy come in and she's like, what do you think? You're just going to come in here and smile and you're going to get everything you want? Like, no, you have to work for it. And you see this beautiful dynamic blossom between them. And she sees how genuinely, like, she doesn't know he's Superman yet, but she's like, wow, he's kind of like intimidating, and he's so nice, he's so kind, and he has to imagine just constantly every decision you make, you have to like hold back and not do too much and like reel it in and like don't like he can't ever be himself.
That
until Lois kind of like breaks that layer out of him, and she's just like cracking that she's like, what's going on here?
But I think that's what I wanted more of. Maybe I just didn't get into it enough to see that much of it. I just didn't get into it when I was younger in comic books enough to want to delve more into the stories. Whereas my guys, Spider-Man, Hulk,
of course, yeah,
Iron Man, like they all got stuff.
Well, at the end of the day, he's a symbol of hope. That's his message. You know what I mean? Like that's what he's here for. Batman and all those other people, they have different. They're all on their own journeys.
Yeah,
it is true that I don't know. Did you see Lois and Clark when it was out? Like it was such a thing when it was out, and I didn't really see. It was Terry Hatcher and
I remember the Dean
like,
Cain, right?
Yeah, like. And I knew people liked it, and I maybe seen 1 or 2 episodes. So when we did this rewatch pretty recently, I was kind of delighted by it. I mean, Dean Cain is not like an Oscar winner. Like he is learning how to act along the way. Sorry, Dean Cain, I guess. I don't know. Terry Hatcher is like carrying the show. But one of the reasons I loved it was that she's the main character. So if you imagine you don't know that this guy who likes you, who's cute at work, who's like failed up a little bit in journalism, right? Like he doesn't really have any experience, but somehow, right? He is like, she's good at her job and he's fine. And so she's annoyed by this sometimes, right? And the whole show is about him trying to win her love. And I thought, oh, of course I like it. I get to like, she's like the avatar for any person watching it who wants that. Like she wants dumplings. He quickly flies and gets like authentic dumplings and brings them back, right? So you see, it's like this weird fan fiction of, this is what would happen if the guy who secretly liked you was Superman.
If he wanted to, he would.
Yeah, exactly. And he does want to, and he does. He would. But it is a better version of it. And now I'm wondering if Superman just works better as a romance. Like when it gets to that phase, whereas like Batman's never... Like, that's not gonna.
Have you seen the trailer for the new Superman coming out this summer?
I have, yeah.
Okay, what do you? I mean, like when I saw it, I thought Rachel Brosnan is really embodying Lois. I think in the best way we're gonna. From the 2 seconds we saw her, I was like, this is Lois Lane.
She's the Lois we know, right? And I was not a Miss Maisel person, but I like her, and I mean, it was exactly what you wanted. It feels like it's straight from the comic books. Like every now and then, I'm like, give me something totally unexpected and I like when they do the side stories of this kind of thing. The even with the I mean, I'm a huge, like Pebbles, I'm a huge Robert Pattinson Twilight person. And for that Batman.
Oh, you probably were like.
I was a little I was like, there's a lot happening. Actually, there was a day that loving Twilight and Robert Pattinson and loving Batman. So one day I go to dinner with friends and I pull out my phone and there's so many texts that I thought somebody had died. I thought something terrible had happened, and I was very upset. And I looked closer at the phone, and it was not that. It was that Robert Pattinson had been cast as Batman, and everyone was telling me. And I was like, see, sometimes news is good. That's a long movie, and I have some issues with it, but I like that it's from a comic book that we don't know as well, from a part of his story that we don't know as well.
It's Long Halloween, right?
Yeah, and it's like... it's early days, right? He doesn't quite know what he's doing yet.
Yeah, that's the one where he's like actually like kind of learning and like messing up and not landing every flip and all.
Right, he's like listening to Nirvana and being super angsty. And you get the sense that when Zoe Kravitz looks at him that he's like, I actually maybe have never kissed a girl. Like he's just very like it's awkward. It's not the Michael Keaton I love, but it's a new chapter. This Superman looks like it's giving me classic.
Exactly.
Superman.
And I love that one. I loved their interaction when you first see them in the trailer. Like she's walking over with she confidently like flips a newspaper over her arm. She has a cup of coffee and she just sees Clark Kent say it must be his first day, and he's all awkward and disheveled, and she's just like, and he like awkwardly turns around to be like, hi. She's like, who the hell is this? And I was like, yes. Anyways.
I'm gonna give it a chance. I like James Gunn. I like his stuff, so
yeah.
Are
you a Marvel person too?
I mean, not as much. But I think, aren't we all
Well, have
Marvel
you done like the
people.
whole, like MCU stuff?
I've done all the MCU. Well, I haven't done all the shows. I haven't like. There was a point at which after like Wanda, where I was like, oh my gosh, they've now given me 5 things to see, and I can't catch up. They gave me too much too quickly, but I try to keep up with it. I'm a little behind though. But like actually, when I saw that things were coming out so soon in the next few weeks, I was like, how did this happen? Where? What? It's like a lot. Like I need a little bit of a lot of content.
You saw WandaVision, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, I did, and I was. It took me a little bit, but then when I did it, I was like, "Oh, now I get it."
Would we argue that that's probably the best show Marvel's put out? Like, are we gonna go into this right now?
It was.
It's Valentine's Day. We can talk about love.
Listen, it was pretty astounding, and I just in terms of what I expected and what I got, it was like the first one too, right? And they really went for it, and I was really not into her role in Doctor Strange because of like I know the timing of the filming and the writing was like awkward, right? Where like it didn't match. Like all of a sudden she's upset about losing children who were fictional. Like it was such a great show about grief, and then they just were like, now she's just really mad because like the kids she dreamed up are not. I don't know. I didn't like the portrayal of her in that movie.
They rushed it. They rushed the evolution. Just what sucks about that Doctor Strange 2 movie is that you cannot go to the theater without having seen. Forget about having seen Doctor Strange 1. You would have had to have seen Doctor Strange 1. You would have had to have seen WandaVision. You would have had to have experienced the Infinity Wars Endgame. Like you had a Loki.
Yeah.
The Loki show. You had to have done homework on like at least 5 other things.
Yeah.
Just to slightly understand that movie. So they kind of like they wrote themselves a little bit into a corner with the stuff they're doing now, because you can't just have like an 8-year-old kid watch a movie that's coming out now and be able to keep up with it, you know?
I do miss being able to watch a thing and not needing to watch the thing before it. It's like telling somebody to watch Paddington 2. You'll be fine. You don't need the first. Paddington 2, it's got you covered. Paddington 3 will probably have you covered. Like I do like the possibility that you're not required to do all this homework, especially when the homework is so extensive. But I haven't done Agatha. Like there's some things that I'm waiting for, like a really intense snowstorm and
Agatha, same vibe with WandaVision,
which is
a little bit more witchy.
Yeah, I got a little bored with some of the others. I think I need like a balance of kicking and punching and then like absolute misery. And there is something about Marvel, and I'm not the first to make this point, certainly, that is, with the exception of X-Men, which whenever I go back to those cartoons, I'm like, what a weird... It's like a soap opera. It's like wild.
Awesome.
Right?
I love it. But, you know, there's a lot more romantic energy and human relationship energy in DC, I think, than Marvel, which, you know, I think somebody blamed Marvel on like movies not being sexy anymore. And it's amazing that you can have all these incredibly good looking people in all of these movies. And I don't believe that any of them actually like want to go off alone and like get it on. I don't believe I like, it's like there's something very like pure about it in a weird way. I can't put my finger on it.
I know what you mean.
It's not necessarily bad, but I do feel like in the DC universe, even with Superman, like one of his big things in a lot of these plot lines is like, can I sleep with this person and not break everyone into a million pieces? Like there's like this weird, it's like a Twilight thing too, right? Of like, I'm a very powerful person. I don't know what happens when I become a passionate person. And that is interesting, right? But I feel like in Marvel, they're all just like high-fiving.
No,
and as someone who loves a romantic plot, like I need a little bit of that. Marvel's rough with that.
Do you know what the X-Men is based on?
What?
Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Charles Xavier, Martin Luther King. Malcolm X is Magneto.
That true?
Yeah. Humans are white people. The mutants are black people.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because the leadership and like style of advocacy, when you think about those two characters.
Professor X is, we can all get along. It's okay.
Right.
And Magneto's like, no, if they don't like us, screw them.
Right.
We're us versus them, and we'll smoke them.
And like the complicated relationship between the two. Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is where I do a rewatch where I'm like, this is really, I find that cartoon is deeper than.
Oh yeah.
Like I had there's an episode, and again, all of these I've done recently. Like I did not do this at the time, and this friend showed it to me, where like Storm she like had an adopted child with some woman, and I'm like, wait a minute. wait a minute, like this is a pretty like what's like I was fascinated, and I was like, this is like a gay, like I think a gay storyline in this cartoon from what is it, 93? I don't know. Like I was just really interested that like this everybody was getting away with a lot of stuff and Canadian accents, and it's just great TV. And I recently had started the new update of that. What is it?
Yeah.
97,
Oh, that one is spectacular. You've seen it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Phenomenal.
Spectacular.
Phenomenal.
Another fun fact, another Marvel fun fact randomly. Black Panther from Marvel was actually named the Black Panther before the Black Panthers were named the Black
Really?
Panthers. Yeah.
So was there an actual influence on the naming of the Black, or was it just
I don't
separate?
know if they got their name, if they were. I'm sure somebody had to have been influenced.
It
Like,
was
what are the
back-
odds? But yeah, the Black Panther character came out before the Black Panther organization.
I would believe
or before they
that
had the
there's-
name,
yeah.
at least the Black Panther
Wow.
organization.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe
crazy.
that there is a correlation.
That was the whole big thing with DC and Marvel because DC was doing their thing, and then Marvel said, okay, well, we got to separate. How about instead of Metropolis and Gotham City, we base it in New York?
Yeah.
And we draw things that people are like, oh, wait a minute, I've seen the Statue of Liberty. I've seen things. So they tried to make it a little more realistic.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm a fan more of the Marvel movies. But DC, whenever they've done the cartoon stuff, their little cartoon movies and everything, so much better.
So good.
Much. Oh, my.
Because they literally make a comic come to life. That's
Oh my
literally
God.
what they take a comic, they're like, okay, animate it.
Amazing.
Here's what I don't understand. If you're DC and you've had some ups and downs with movies, right? Let's be honest. There are movies we haven't even been allowed to see, right? There were shelving movies, right? That drives me crazy. Why wouldn't you have the minds behind these cartoons, the writers, write the movie?
Right. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you my opinion. I think that they saw what it took Marvel basically 10 years to do. And they were like, let's do this in like 2 movies. So Marvel, they came out, they did the Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton. Then they did the Iron Man movie. Then they did the Captain America movie. Then they did the Thor movie. And in all of them, you started kind of seeing a little bit of a connection. Then they did the Avengers. Oh, whoa, everybody's connecting. Yeah. Then they did, I think it was Thor 2, Iron Man 2, whatever. Then Guardians. Then it wasn't until Avengers 2 really when you were like, wait a minute. This is all connected to that first one when that was when in the post-credit scene Thanos said, I'll do it myself. That's when people started going, wait a minute, hold on. This is all kind of connected. And DC saw that and they said, okay. And that took what? So let's say the Edward Norton Hulk movie was 2007, 2008. The Ultron movie was 2015. So we're talking 7, 8 years or whatever. DC said, okay, let's do this one movie and just try and blow our load and create 5 or 6 movies worth of content. And it's just like with what I was saying with Wanda, they kind of rushed her character development. They were slowly developing her, and then they said, okay, she's a psychopath now. Yeah. And it's like, okay, she went from like a little sad and a little nutty to just completely like off the rails.
Yeah.
We needed something in between there. Like I think the way they did the Loki character. You didn't see the Loki show, but that one.
I didn't. I need to see that. Yeah.
But, and when he first started, he was like the evil brother of Thor and all that stuff. And as the movies went on, you kind of started going like, oh, this dude isn't that bad. I kind of see his side, like he's adopted. His family kind of like likes him, but they don't like him, And then after the Loki series, you were pulling for the guy. So they did that one. It was you ever see Breaking Bad?
Yeah. Yeah, recently too, for the first time, 2 years ago, which is
character development was amazing in that show because they did it slowly. There were some slow ass episodes in that whole series. You ever see Breaking Bad?
Oh, I really resisted it, and my boyfriend watched Buffy and I watched Breaking Bad. This was like our let's see what the other person likes kind of thing. And I looked at him and I said, what I really want to show about is Mike from Breaking Bad. And he looked at me and he was like, you're about to get one. And we did Better Call Saul. And I was like, the difficult thing is, like, I love Better Call Saul so much, but you can't do it without Breaking Bad. So and I love Breaking Bad too, but you can't just talk about Marvel. You can't just start with Better Call Saul because they do such beautiful, slow burn character development that is really earned by the time you get to know these characters. I mean, it's the writing on that was.
Yeah.
I still need to see. I heard Better Call Saul is amazing.
And what's your opinion on the new Buffy reboot? Just real quick. Well, not a reboot. Sarah Michelle Gellar said it's a continuation.
It's a continuation. So there were a few almost with this, and then the whole thing with Joss Whedon, which all this goes back to DC, and that we can debate the Snyder Cut and his thing all day, right? Like, I am happy that if it's done, it'll be done right by a bunch of women. It's awful when like somebody comes into where you learn that somebody's been terrible, right? And you're like, oh, this person who is not apologetic even very much in the way that I would have wanted also contributed to a piece of media that was important to me and that I love. And the thing is, there are also a bunch of other writers on that show, specific episodes written by people like, I think her name is Jane Espenson. She wrote a lot of Buffy and on a lot of other shows. And I'm like, well, I don't want that history to go away. I still want to love these things. And so this idea that it doesn't have to be all bad, that Sarah Michelle Gellar and that other people can revive a story that obviously meant a lot to people. So I'm excited. I'm glad she's involved. And I mean, I'm a Buffy girl, so
I love Buffy.
I need to rewatch. I would watch episodes of Buffy, and I enjoyed them when I would see them, but I never really got into the series. But when the series Angel happened, did you see Angel?
No.
I know you saw Angel. When that one came, I was obsessed, dude. You know the Angel character from Buffy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The vampire with the soul.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And Batman. Angel's Batman.
Man. Imagine having to go around and not being able to, first of all, being the most evil of the evil, then realizing all the evil that you did, feeling bad for it, and knowing that if you ever experience any type of happiness, you're going to go back to that. That's what I'm talking about right there.
That is a burden. That is a problem.
I get it.
That is what I'm talking about.
And you're walking around looking like David Boreanaz in the 90s and early 2000s, and you can't be happy. It's like an extra. It's an extra problem. No, it's this is reminding me. The Joss Whedon of it all is reminding me of like the day that I watched the Snyder Cut, like on my laptop, and I was like.
Oh, gosh.
I would like take a break. I'd walk in a circle. I'd go to the bathroom. I'd have a little meal. Part 2. It was like so long, and I was like, and yet I did like it more.
What I liked more about the Snyder Cut was every time Wonder Woman came on screen, they played that operatic.
Like,
like every time Gal Gadot came on my damn screen, there was some operatic thing. Like she could be talking, and it was in the back, just like ever so low. I was like, did they? They couldn't afford this in the first cut, so he's like, just throw it all in there. Where have you been? This is like a great call. Like,
this is not what
Meredith,
you thought. You did not think you were getting comics today. I'm sure I didn't think I was getting comics today. And it's so funny because this is like Valentine's week and writing an advice column. Everybody wants to talk about Valentine's Day. And I'm like, I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
Oh, you should have heard me when I first
walked in. When he
in.
first came in here, I told him, I said, hey, we have Meredith coming in next week. You need this. And I said, why? I go, because the love letters, she writes about all different ways that people have found love and the way they're maintaining love. And you need this more than... Oh, look at him. Already rolling his eyes.
Are you...
He's a little... See, you haven't even really been burned or anything. I don't know what you're just stubborn. You are stubborn.
Maybe that's the problem. I think being burned is, or not being burned, but I do think like rejection. I'm always weirded out by someone who's like had a very nice love life and they've like never been dumped horribly. I don't wish it on my worst enemies, and I am not good at going through a breakup.
It's a part of life.
But like it was formative in a way of resilience and whatever, and but maybe but
no. Generally, I'm actually very curious on the love letters thing, so I really want you to like deep dive into that right after this. My little tiny spiel, I will say.
Yes.
So this one cannot. I love love. I am a very I love all that. I just think my approach is maybe dated and isn't with the modern times. Hold on. It's just, I just feel as if it's, I'm going to say a very controversial thing. I think dating back in the day is easier than it is now. And you can throw the whole dating app things, whatever, but...
Well, let me defend you.
Okay.
I'm going to defend him.
Thank you. I'll start crying.
No. Moose he's 24. He's going to be 25 in a couple weeks. Okay. And what I said to him is, you remind me of my wife. You are an old soul. When I first met my wife now, she's 14 years younger than me. She was 23. I was 37. And I was telling people about her, and they were like, oh, I was divorced and everything. So they were like, oh, yeah, getting with the young women or whatever. And I said, no. I said, if she was an average 23-year-old, I would say hi, and I would probably hate to have anything longer than a 30-second surface conversation with her. She's not your average 23-year-old. She's very mature for her age. So that's why I bring it back to him, where I said, I think you are going to be similar to my wife, where you're either, if you get with somebody anytime soon, it's going to be a woman maybe like in her early 30s who kind of went through the dating scumbag guys or whatever, and now she's a little more like, all right, hold on, I want to be serious. I don't want to just like, hop to different dudes. Or the other side will be, he'll get into his early mid 30s or whatever and meet a girl who at the time in her 20s, you have different perspectives of what you want at certain ages. And, there are times when you're just like, I just want somebody who's hot and it's going to treat me good, And then you, after going through that and figuring out that those guys kind of suck, she's like, no, you know what? I want somebody who's going to be, who's going to help me. I've figured myself out. I'm content with where I am in life, and now this person's going to enhance that aspect of it, as opposed to going, I want someone who's going to fill in the blanks. No, you want someone who's going to enhance whatever you already have. And I said, so if you do get with somebody like in your early 30s, mid 30s, it's going to be a girl who's kind of gone through that, and maybe now you know her and she's just into like good looking guys with muscles who are pieces of shit, but she learned that really the whole time what she wanted was my little friend Mustafa Ben Salah.
My little friend.
Yes.
I love that. I mean, I agree, and I understand your point about it being easier earlier. I think it's like for every evolution in technology, it's like there's also like a bad thing that comes with it, which is like so much swiping, and there's too much and it moves too fast, and it's like everybody's disposable, and there's something about the slow burn. We talk about character development, but also in relationships, right? Of like, not feeling like it has to be just a left or a right. And I could see that being really difficult. Also, like for people who are old souls, it's also hard to be 25 because you're like really not maybe ready for some stuff, but you're also not interested in nonsense. So it's like, where do you sit? You're like, I don't know. I don't know that I was an old soul, but I definitely in my 20s was like, I think I'm supposed to be in my 30s. In my 30s, I was like, I think I'm supposed to be in my 40s. And then I was like, okay, here I am.
That's why I'm having an 80s themed birthday party.
Yeah.
Do you have older siblings?
Yeah.
Okay, because I also think sometimes people skew. Like I have a sister who's 4 years older, and I tend to skew up because I was influenced too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Earlier, I was making the joke to Moose. I went super extreme, and I said, listen, after talking to Meredith, you're going to realize that, your soulmate's going to be some woman who just got out of prison and has been divorced multiple times. And he was making a face. And I said, but my point is, when I got with my wife, picture this. I just got divorced, right? And I'm like, that's it. Never dating again. I'm just going to have to, I have my kids. I'm like, I'll just be a dad and maybe every now and then find somebody and hang out with them, but I'll never get into anything serious. And a friend of mine was like, no, you're a good guy, whatever. He was giving me that speech. And I said, you don't know me, okay? Pretend you don't know me. How are you going to even open the door and want to get to know someone when you find out that they're divorced? They have, at the time, 3 kids from 2 different women. And by the way, I also go to bed at like 7 o'clock at night during the week. And on the weekends, I like hanging out with my kids. I said, so that's like, before you even get to know me, all those things are going to be like, I don't want to date. I wouldn't want to date myself if I heard all those things. So what I'm trying to say is that's an extreme example that she just got out of prison, multiple divorces.
Yeah, no, I
but
know.
you just never know.
No, you don't.
You know,
You never know.
who you're going to connect with.
Yeah. I swear to God, guys, I do it for like joking value. I promise you this does not keep me up at night. I'm just like, whatever.
He came in today so mad about Valentine's Day.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not really into that. I'm not. Again, this is like my job is to care about things like Valentine's Day, and I'm like, really, it's just like I don't know. I'll be, like I'm glad people are thinking about love, especially because in my profession, it's like a good time to talk about it. But I'm actually think it's kind of a silly holiday. But one thing I was going to say is that I think my friend Monica, Google her, Monica O'Neill. She's like a great therapist and really interesting. But she said to me, Meredith, your brain doesn't really stop. Like it doesn't evolve into where it needs to be. Like you're not fully making full adult decisions and you're still sort of plastic and moving around, whatever, until you're like 25. So if you think about that age, right? And I think about some of the choices I made 21 to 25 that were pretty good choices, some of them less great. I'm like, why was I not scared of anything? Why was I just like walking home at night in the middle of the night? Well, I wasn't, like my brain wasn't fully formed. So the idea that people meet partners even before 25, I just have to imagine that they're sort of growing together in that way.
One would hope.
I think, right, hopefully, and many do, right? They sort of grow up together. But up until like you're 30, I feel like you're figuring yourself out. Certainly up until you're 25, you're like, who am I and how can I be a happy person? So like the fact that it's not keeping you up at night is perfect because I just feel like, yeah, I mean, we're not even making great decisions with all the information before that age because our brains don't work that way, which is fascinating to me because those are important years. You like maybe decide whether to go to school, you pick a job sometimes, and like knowing we're not even like ready to do that really, it's like it makes sense that we change our minds after a bunch of times, and that's okay too. But I empathize because I sometimes I feel like less options and better options are certainly better than like 1,000 options that none of them, everything feels weird and wrong, and
there's too many options.
It's too many options, and then suddenly you're totally right. You're like, oh, that one works. That one's fun. Or you're like, I'm really enjoying myself being single for a long time. I mean, I'm a very late bloomer with this stuff, like writing about it and wasn't really looking for it. So, like I had some relationships in my 20s, and then I was like, oh, like now I really want to like write a book and like watch a lot of TV and like eat.
But like honestly, yeah. Hell yeah.
And I think it was a bad, like I suffered from this thing where I knew I didn't want to have kids. Like I love kids and I love being around my friends' kids. And I had a cousin who was my dad's cousin where she was, partnered, no kids, would like take me to cool dinners. And I was like, I want to be like Cousin Tina. I just want to be like that. And so I wanted to grow into that. But that's hard when you're in your 30s also because a lot of people are like, we want kids and we want to do this now. So I was like, maybe I just need to like step away and let everybody who wants to do that, like find each other, get it done. And then I can like show up at the end of that. Like it was, I never felt entitled to prioritize that because I didn't really need it. I could have a blind date here and there. And then I was like, I'll just show up when I'm ready. And that was late. It was real late.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody has everyone's like in a different chapter in their book, I like to say,
Yeah, totally. And that's like, exciting too. I think, but I do like the idea that you might, as an old soul, find somebody, in their 30s who like gets it.
No, genuinely, like if like you look at, if life isn't linear, they say, but like if I look at things like linear, I promise there's like a couple other boxes I really want to check before I kind of go into that. And actually, I really want to dive into your writing, right? Because I write too. I write too. Let me reel it in real quick. I just started writing, but I'm actually really curious on your start at the Globe because I was reading on your website a bit about the whole love letters of it all, which I think is honestly such a smart concept. But can you kind of take us back and like when did you start writing and how did that all begin?
I mean, I was a basic journalism person, who, well, I related to radio stuff back in the day, like I used to think, oh, maybe I'll be a music critic. 'Cause my parents were musicians, but like I was very bad at it. And they went to Juilliard. They were like really good musicians. And
wow.
I was terrible. I mean, I was passable, but I wasn't like that.
What did they play?
My late mother played the piano, and she was a gorgeous piano player. I mean, just classical stuff, right? And my dad, who is still with us, played the bassoon. And what I love about my dad was he then went into like sales. But I was like, why didn't you had a Juilliard degree, like? And he was like, yeah, but I played the bassoon, but I like didn't want to be in an orchestra. I don't know what he thought he was going to do with that bassoon. You don't like take it on the road by yourself. I don't know many bassoon soloists who have like poppets. But he's a great woodwind player still, and he'll sometimes just play the sax. So I thought maybe I'd be a music critic because I knew a lot about what they had taught me. And then Sarah Rodman, our former music critic who now lives in LA, she took me to a White Zombie concert. She was reviewing it, and she was like, if you ever do this job, you'd have to go to this. And I was like, I don't want to ever do this again. and I realized also the concerts I wanted to go to, I didn't want to have to work. Like, I don't want to write a review. I just want to like have a glass of wine and watch that show. So that was out of the question. And I started writing more about relationships and human interest stories. And, this is right around the time Facebook was becoming public to everyone. Like social media was like a thing all of a sudden. And it seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And then I noticed the Globe had a syndicated advice column, and Lander's daughter had taken over that syndication. But I felt like Boston was so in its own business that it needed to have a local. I wanted an advice column where somebody felt like they might know the writer, because Boston is like very like towny in a way that where I'm from was not, where you might know everybody or somebody might know that person. And
where are you from?
I'm from Maryland. I was born in New Jersey, but I'm from Maryland. And so many people were transplants that worked in DC. They came from other places, and it just, it was like the suburbs of DC and Baltimore. And it just felt sprawling in that sense. Whereas I felt like moving here, I would say to people, oh, what part of Boston are you from? And they'd say New Hampshire. That doesn't happen in Maryland. Like everybody's from Boston and you're not from Boston. It felt like people were really, and the people here felt like Boston was the center of the universe. Whereas in Maryland, we felt like New York maybe was the center, not even DC. So I loved that people here were like obsessed with themselves, and in a way that's great for a local media company, because I think more people feel like they have to get the Globe, even still digitally, to know their local politics. Because if Boston's the place you're going to live forever and the best place in the world, and you want it to be better, you want to know who your city councilors are. But anyway, so this was right after, I guess it was like 2002, I got hired, long time ago now. And the column started in 2009. So but it took a bit, and then we started the advice column and then the podcast in 2018.
Wow.
How do you start an advice column like that? Do you just solicit for people to have, if they have relationship issues or questions?
This was the weird thing. We put a thing on Boston.com, and it was like, do you have love problems? We're starting an advice column. And then people just sent me a bunch of stuff. No one asked for qualifications.
Well,
I'm not a therapist.
I'm like,
not only did they send, I mean, this was a different time. We were less savvy about online and security. But people would be like, sad in Somerville, anonymous, right? And then it would say their name and they worked for Fidelity under. Like they were sending this from their work email. Wow. And a lot of guys, actually. I mean, I try not to generalize with gender, but the dudes were like, here's my social security number, here's my address. I trust you to keep this anonymous, but also I'm cheating on my wife. It was really weird. Whereas the women would like create email addresses.
Yeah. I'm like having a really scary parallel with you right now.
Yeah?
Literally, the movie I'm writing is about a writer from New York City who writes about the human experience
I love this.
Goes to rural Virginia in the South and finds himself entangled in like a love triangle, rectangle kind of thing.
I want to see this.
I'm literally like listening to, I'm like getting my chills. I'm like, oh my God.
Well,
that's so crazy.
I love, this sounds like something I would totally want to consume as media, because I do also think that like, going from a big place to a small place and Boston is not small certainly, but it feels like a community in a particular way, made up of a bunch of communities
compared to something like New York City.
Oh yeah. I mean, New Yorkers are New Yorkers, and they all like, my sister lived there for years, and but here there's that weird feeling that we could draw a line connecting all of us in a way that sometimes feels suffocating and other times feels quite beautiful. So Yeah, so then we started doing it, and I was weirdly more confident, I think, at the beginning than I am now. At 30, I was like, with my brain barely formed, I was like, I know a lot.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot. And some of the advice I very much stand by. Now I'm like, I think we've all just been a little bit more open to openness, if that makes sense. Like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, we're trying to do right by each other. A lot more people welcome therapy into their lives.
Yep.
There was a story, I can't remember where it first ran, about like the weaponizing of therapy talk. And I can be guilty of that too, of like boundaries and space and self-care. And you start saying these things and you're like, what does it even mean at this point? And like, you can't be a jerk and then say it's because of self-care, right? And so it's like the kind of things I write about it and think about. The word narcissist comes up a lot more. And I think like from letter writers, and I think they hear this, right? But there is your boyfriend a narcissist, or is he just like the worst?
There's
in a
weight
different
to
way?
those words.
Yeah.
There is, and I have to be extra careful using them too. People tell me their attachment styles. That did not happen in 2009. They'll be like, I have anxious attachment. I'm like, this is really interesting. Like that may have come to them from a professional. It may have come to them from a book, but it's how they see themselves. And so the job has changed a lot. I love the podcast because people like tell their full stories, and obviously Pebbles was a guest, and that was like a super treat. But right now I'm working on a story. So there are also stories with it, right? Like I'm working on a story now about, well, did everybody get divorced after COVID? Because in 2020, like a few months into lockdown, there was news out of China that divorces had spiked. But really what was happening was that the office had been closed and then it reopened, I think. It was like things got paused and then it spiked. Like we had to cancel a bunch of weddings and then everybody got married. But a sociologist at the time told me, when something awful like this happens or something groundbreaking like this happens, nothing like COVID had happened before, but she said studies show that everybody does everything. That if you want to have a kid, you have a kid. If you want to get divorced, anything you've been waiting on, you just do. You want to retire, suddenly people are retiring. So right now I'm working on a story like, did everybody ditch the spouse they secretly despised? Did everybody couple up if they had hoped to? And that's been fascinating. Everybody's got a story about how that time affected them. And there is a lot of that. Just people jumped to the next step.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a time right now where people are more, I like it, where people are talking more about just they're different. Everyone has a different story, whether it's your relationship, your life, all that stuff. But at the same time, like you were saying, everybody doing the therapy thing, like it's not just relationships, it's just in life. We'll have, I have little kids, and I'll hear parents talking about, first of all, remember when you were a little kid, you would just like go over a friend's house, or they'd come over your house and like that was it? I don't do that anymore. Now it's play dates. You have to like set up play dates. But what's the term? Oh my God. I heard a parent talking about basically the kid was playing with toys, but they didn't call it playing with toys. They were calling it self-guided. What the hell was, and I'm listening and I'm like, I said to my wife, I go, it sounds like her kid was playing with her fucking toys. Why is she trying to make it a fancy term? It's just what people do. And people are doing that like crazy now, which I guess it's good, but in a way it's bad, because when you start labeling yourself as certain things all the time, even if it's something that you don't want to be, you almost put yourself in this box where it's your identity. Even though you're like, I hate being depressed, but I have depression. It's like, okay, but you're not always going to have it if you work on doing things to fix yourself. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Do it all the time. I am always this. I am always that.
Yeah.
Like this is inherently who I am. And then it turns out, well, actually, I do like cilantro. I mean, this is a silly version, but the emotional equivalent of that. And I actually did that quite a bit in my 30s, where what I was just talking about, the whole, I'm going to back away from dating because I want other people to, like, I'd be like, I don't want that right now.
Yeah.
And in fact, then you become just that, right? Like there's like the openness to the fact that you could also change, right? Which I have a difficult time changing. And then, but also like sometimes I change in ways that are kind of fun. Like that I'm like, especially as I get older, I'm like, oh, like maybe I used to be somebody who had trouble taking vacation, especially like a tropical vacation. I went with friends once to Aruba and I was neurotic the whole time. I did work. I just could not. Well, I think now I could do that.
Yeah.
I think I could pull off having a bunch of drinks and going to the pool. I have changed, right? And so that I think you're totally right. You remind me with the kid thing of and I was like this too. I would like get on my bike and just ride it around the neighborhood. Now I know. I think about if I had kids, would I let my kid just ride around the neighborhood? We know too much about the dangers also, but I have friends who will have a baby and the baby goes to daycare, right? And they're getting pictures, hourly pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, how wonderful you get to know your child is in good care. Like there's this oversight that, you know, my parents wouldn't have had. I mean, I wasn't in daycare, but I don't think they could have afforded that. But on the other hand, you're like hyper vigilant.
Exactly.
And I imagine that as a parent, you want the ability to leave and come back and not hourly feel like you have to, you know, get a read, you know, it's like having the cameras on your pets that you watch them all day, or your children, right? Like we're not supposed to watch each other. We have to learn how to detach a little bit. And there is so much information we can have that sometimes I think it really messes with us. Like, here's your child eating lunch. Well, guess what? Like, just eat lunch, you know? And
which goes to why dating is so crazy right now, because you want what normally would happen when you meet somebody, what normally happens. I mean, it might take like 18 months to learn what you could learn before meeting the person now.
Yeah.
Oh, they're into this, they're into this, they're into this, they like this, they don't like this. And right there, you're going, screw it, they're out. But if you met them, if you didn't know all those things and you met them, I mean, there are some like really obviously hardcore differences that, you know, some people are just like, okay, that's my deal breaker. But a lot of things, you turn it into a deal breaker when it's really not. You make it into like, oh, we never get along. How do you know? You haven't met this person. If you met this person, started talking, you might be like, oh, this person's interesting. Let's meet again. You start, you know, slowly, organically developing a relationship. And then you figure out that one thing that if you saw the bio, you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't be into. But you're like, you know what? Okay, we don't really get along with that. But that's not like, we're not having shouting matches about it at breakfast or whatever.
Course.
It's like he does his thing, I do mine or whatever. But unfortunately, that is not, it's just not happening right now. And because Facebook and online dating and all that stuff has been around, it's been around now for so long that there are some people who it's just like, there are people who, you know, we could say, oh, we remember when it was like this or like that. And now, you know, people are online dating. There are people who it's like, that's all they know. That's all they know. That's all they've been programmed with. So to get to know somebody organically over time is not even, it's the equivalent of like us being like, oh no, people just don't fly. What are you talking about? We don't think about that because people don't fly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you get it, but how many people in your age group get that?
Yeah, not many.
You know?
There does seem to be something coming around where like, we've had a few podcast episodes where younger people are like, I want to meet somebody. They'll say, you know, in real life, where I'm like, it's all real life, I guess. But they want some sort of throwback dating that I think is a mix is good. And I do think, I want to say that like some of these technologies have made life so much better. I was with a friend the other night and, you know, if you're in a room and you are gay and you're trying to figure out who is available and gay in a room in Boston and you're like, not everybody's wearing a name tag, right? I'm like, well, isn't this lovely that there's an app that tells you who's available and who is gay, right? That whatever you're looking for, that it is there for you, and it's like you don't maybe have to guess 1,000 things on top of, does this person find me attractive? So there are like real benefits. And for people who are isolated in terms of where they live, they're like at the end of a cul-de-sac in like the suburbs and they're a single parent and they can't get out of there. I mean, my mom could have absolutely used an app. She eventually got on a dating website, right? But like it would have made her less lonely. She would have found friends that way. But there's some happy medium of this, and finding it is really hard. But I always think that I'm the most worried in life about elder millennials. I happen to think they got like the worst of a lot of different things, and they were the first, I think, generation to never have the freedom of no basis of comparison. Like I spent most of my 20s not knowing what anyone else was doing, who anyone else was doing. No one was posting anything. I was just like, I must be great because I only know the people I know and they seem great and I seem great. Now,
wow, I love that concept.
Oh, it was, now I didn't know a lot of things. There were many things I did not know that I should have known, right? There's like a awakening when you get to hear voices that you weren't exposed to before. And like, I wouldn't go back to that time. But I didn't have to like scroll through and be like, wow, at my age, everybody else is doing cool stuff and on cool vacations. I was just like watching Law and Order and thought that was fine. And then, I was closer to 30 by the time that really kicked in. But my friends who are slightly younger are like, they've been comparing their whole lives and feeling left out and judging them for a long time.
Yeah.
Not just that. I'll take it one step further. I was telling this to Pebbles and Melissa one time, and they were like, what are you talking about? So I was reading this book called The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. Sounds weird. It's a good book anyway. But the basis of the book is how throughout time humans have been able to kind of keep with the times as far as things evolving, keep up. But now because of technology's here, we're here, and whenever we come close to keeping up, it shoots up like another level, so we're having trouble with that. But to go one step further with that is the generation now, forget about comparing themselves to other people. They're also comparing themselves to themselves because they're putting up pictures of themselves as babies and this and that. And there's a subliminal, subconscious thing there where you might be like, well, you're just trying to keep up with how you were as a little kid without the knowledge of you're supposed to evolve. You like this as a little kid. You were like this as a teenager. You went through a stage where maybe you were just like a piece of shit, you like to party, you treated people like crap, and then something happened that maybe somebody treated you like that, and you learned, and you need those things in life. Almost, I don't want to say disconnected, but you need to not compare yourself to yourself on a day-by-day basis visually, I guess.
And you're totally right. And you're comparing yourself to yourself at different eras of your life.
Yeah.
And the AI piece of it is so weird, right? Where like, actually, I won't name it, just I don't want to libel anyone, but watching the Super Bowl, there was a commercial that I was simultaneously moved by, confused by, and then suspected it was written by ChatGPT. It was just like words. It was a famous person saying words, and it was like freedom, road. And I was like, this is making me feel a certain way. I don't know why. And it's just nonsense words, but also like that can be online too in terms of people's images. We don't know. None of it looks real. I've heard from a lot of straight men in particular that there's like a face tuning kind of quality to online dating profiles where like you don't know what you're looking at because we do so much alteration to photos and this is a part of the normal thing, right? Like we're just altering. I don't know. It's really hard. It's hard for everybody, and I wouldn't get rid of technology and the internet. Certainly, I found some of my favorite writers that way, and some, I want to be able to like hop online and talk about Batman with a bunch of strangers if I want to. But I hope we're all like getting out into the world too.
Yeah, I was at like the dawn of it as a child. Like I would say like social media was there when I was a child, but it wasn't like what it is now. Like it was my older sisters on like MySpace and like AOL. I didn't even know what I was like. Oh, they're just texting their friends.
Like LiveJournal.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like things like that. So it wasn't so self-consuming. It got like that, unfortunately, during your years where you're probably the most insecure when you're a teenager. Mm-hmm. That's when it really like hit the head, and I was like, oh, so this is what we're doing.
Well,
now.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show, and they have a podcast too, Mortified, where people read from their childhood diaries. And I have participated once, and it was mortifying. It's a good name for it. I have a very lengthy diary entry from when I was about 16 or 17, very upset about being straight. Very upset.
Really?
Oh, I am listening to Tori Amos and very disappointed in myself. like, what's wrong with me? Am I not smart enough? Why to be gay? It's really not what you expect from that era. And then I'll talk about wanting to marry Christian Slater like I'll say, maybe I could be gay. I love Christian Slater. Where is Christian Slater right now? Would it be legal if I dated Christian Slater? And reading this out loud is really, you just want to curl up into a ball. But I find it interesting that after a certain point, they always look for readers in cities that they're in. They're always older than a certain age for the most part, because after a certain point, your diaries became live journals. And a lot of people deleted those because they're mortifying and you don't want that in the world. And so like I do hope that younger generations are keeping to some extent the art of diary writing, because it's really meant for you and not meant to share.
Oh, it saved I don't want to sound dramatic and say it saved my life, but like when I started journaling, 2020, oh my God. It's such a shift. I've noticed.
And to do it online is just a different thing. And I think there was a generation when the internet was new, it was like, oh, now I can do this in a way that somebody could secretly see. The real journaling of it all is you can type it out if you want, but for you is really important. Actually, my favorite mortified thing that I saw locally, this woman who's probably like 50 something gets up and reads this whole thing about this boy and jeans and why Jordache jeans, and it's on and on. And like this is like her life is over basically if this guy doesn't talk to her. And at the end, she looks at the audience and says, and that guy was Ben Affleck, which is like the most Boston-y thing, right? Like she went to school in Cambridge, and just, especially these like local stories, but they have them in a bunch of cities. But I'm always interested in who keeps the written thing.
Oh yeah. I love, that's why I started doing it. Cause I just finished one a month ago, and it was like, actually it was a lengthy notebook, but I had it for 4 years. Ugh. I was like, this is gonna be fun one day to look back. No, it's I was really tough on myself as a teenager.
Yeah. What's your method of journaling? Like, do you write just whatever you're thinking? You write it out on the
there's
page,
so many different things. Like, I start with the date.
Yeah.
My very first journal entry was oh God. My very first journal entry was, I just watched a Diary of a Wimpy Kids movie with my friends because it was on TV. And then I got the idea, maybe keeping a journal is probably a good idea. I don't know what I'm going to write, but we'll see where this goes. That's literally my first page.
Good.
But I do I just dump out whatever in my brain.
Yeah.
Because I just think sometimes things that shouldn't be there, you get them out.
Yeah.
I do gratitude writing now, so every day
You are an old soul.
Gratitude. And I'm
I love
three
this.
things. Yeah.
5 minute journal. Totally with the 5 minute journal.
Yeah, on the app. Yeah,
5 minute
I like
journal,
the old school paper and pen because I sit down and it centers me. Yeah, random stuff, ideas, like creative ideas. Well, creative ideas, I have a whole other journal for that. But yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What's your method of journaling?
I mean, as a writer, I'm doing this awful thing where the notes app, where in the middle of the night, I'll be like, what about this idea, right? Or this. So I've been doing a lot. I'm much more of a typer than I used to be. But yeah, it's always best when I get it down in the moment. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a daily, here's what my day was.
Oh, really? See, I do the whole 5 minute journal. It's great.
I'm so glad. It's really healthy, and I should do more of it. And I, as I get older, I'm falling back into wanting to do those things, like the things you do when you're in your like formative years of planning your life. Like now, I'm like, when my sister was staying with me, getting a divorce, she made a 3-dimensional diorama style vision board, like she was in high school, middle school, right? Like it had like cut out magazine pictures.
I just did that too.
I mocked her because I'm her sister, right? Because that's what you do. Yeah. And guess what? She has that now. She put a picture of a palm tree. She's under, and I just thought, let's all just get some magazines and some scissors and make some make some collages, because it is helpful.
I'm not even kidding. I went on Pinterest. I went on a couple of my boards. I print out some photos. None of it has happened yet, but I still look at it every day and I'm like, why did I pick that? Why did I pick? Because I did it very subconsciously. I just like this one. And I'm like, you know what? I can't wait to come back to it, because I really wonder why I chose certain things on there. And I like to, put the pieces together later. That's just me.
No, you need that. Like I mean, you know me, I'm a psycho. I have like a whole morning routine that I do before I even come in here. I meditate, I journal, I read, all that stuff. But I think you need that as opposed to just kind of like, I mean, there's just like everything we were talking about, like the online dating. It's like there's a benefit to like the balance of both. But if you go too extreme on one end or the other, it's, I don't know, you're just kind of floating through life, which I guess in a way you do kind of need to see where life takes you, but you also want to, I like to call it starting off the day not on your back foot. A lot of people, like, their alarm goes off and they're like, snooze. And their alarm goes off, snooze. Then their alarm goes off the third time and they go, oh shit, I'm late. And now they're rushing their entire day, and they're mad at somebody at work because they did something that is making their day even worse, even though you created the thing in the beginning of the day. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, listen, 9 times out of 10 when I'm at work and I'm feeling like I'm actually traumatized, it turns out I was just dehydrated. Like, it turns out I have not brought my best self to the table to deal with anything. And actually that time of remote work, because I was lucky enough to be able to do remote work, so many people couldn't. I started to realize, it's like 4 hours later, I haven't had water. I haven't gotten up and moved around. These were not things I was asking of myself in the office. And it turned out if I just like did that and like had a healthy whatever, I was like nicer to people. Taking care of myself was actually a thing to do to take care of everybody. And, I.
Do you have a morning routine?
Oh, it's not that great. It's a little bit like what you said. Well, I do.
Snooze twice.
I snooze once. And I've read all these books that say just like, set your alarm for the time you'll actually wake up. Like, it doesn't really help to snooze. So I've been trying to be better about that. I work well doing some work immediately, like rolling out of bed and doing like an hour's worth of work. And then I have my oatmeal, I have my coffee, I sort of take a beat. And, then I have a routine. And I absolutely have a night routine that involves reading. And my bedtime process is much longer.
My night routine's way more important to me than my morning one.
And that may flip. I'm noticing that as I get older, morning is, I'm like better. People always joke about like, they say they're like morning or night people. And I'm always like, I'm like 11 to 3.
Yeah.
The rest of me is like,
I'm a lunchtime person.
Right. I'm like, you've got a few good hours. And then, I am finding, and it seems like I'm constantly having to reset, like what is the right time and what is the right routine. You guys are much more in a regimented, like, you're recording certain hours, and I think I'm a little bit more all over the place. So it's looking to the next day and saying, when is the time I take a long walk? When is the time I exercise? When is otherwise those things don't happen.
Yeah.
So,
what's your nighttime routine?
Oh, I have to a lot of media. I mean, I'm like I watch some TV and then I read a bit. But it's like that's like a soul nourishing time.
Are you Kindle or are you book?
I'm a Kindle person. I mean, I think when they first invented Kindles, they thought it was going to be for young people who love tech, and it turns out to be for older people who like want to bump up that type. And so what I often, when I'm loving a book, I buy the physical copy of the book, but I also have it on a Kindle. It's made me just spend a lot more money, but I read for a long time, and sometimes if I really need to go to sleep, I reread favorites, which. I'm sure Pebbles does too, because
are you like her? You like the young adult type of stuff? Or?
I think a lot of young adult readers moved into romance territory because it just was the way that publishing will call one thing. I met somebody in England once who was like, you guys call books young adult, that here just would be a book. So I think it's categorized very differently. I'm probably she does a little bit more straight young adult than I do, I think, but we have a big overlap, and right now I'm really interested in Regency romance, a category I never thought I would like because I don't like old-timey things, like we're talking Bridgerton stuff here, but some of them are really like feministy funny commentaries on the now. So and really Jane Austen was too. I never understood the whole Jane Austen thing, and now I'm like, oh, I get it a little bit. I get it from a modern contemporary lens set in that time. Well, maybe it's not so different. Maybe we, maybe courtship is not so different. So I'm been into that. It's a lot of like 50 layers of clothing. A sex scene is like 90 pages. It's like, and then my pantaloons, and then my bonnet, and I'm like, all right, now I'm going to sleep.
I'm so not a fiction. I'm like a self-help nerd or like biographies.
That's what my sister is. Like she'll be reading like ways to optimize her life or philosophies, or when she was living with me, she briefly, I was thinking like, and I do like some nonfiction too, absolutely, but for escapism and nighttime, fiction is for night.
Yeah.
But the
Nonfiction
funny
is for
thing
day.
is, my wife will read a lot of what was the last one that she was reading? Crap, it was Court of Thorns and
Oh my God.
Akatar.
yeah. Okay, so she'll read those a lot, and whenever she does, I'm always like I don't like reading it, but when she reads, I'm like, what's happening now? So like it's almost like I'm watching it.
Yeah.
on TV.
That book, 2016 election happens. Times are complicated. My friend Lauren hands me a book and says, "You know what? This is what you need right now to get through these times." And I was like, okay. And then I started reading this and I was like, you've ruined my life. These books are 9 million pages. Yep. I'm riveted by every page. There's some page where I'm like, I've lost track of whether this makes sense. And yet I am completely devoted. I joined a cult with that book.
Yeah, and my wife is just a good storyteller too. So like we'll be driving. I'm like, oh, so what happened yesterday in the book? She's telling me about it. My 7-year-old's in the back, and she's like, and what happened with the fairy guy?
Yeah.
Like, she's even paying attention to the story.
Yeah.
Have you
Listen,
read that quarter?
I haven't, but I've heard they're really good. Really good. Yeah.
They're quite gripping.
And I love a fantasy thing. So
yeah, I mean, if she can explain. I always say, like, I need somebody to explain. There's like a newer, is it Crescent City?
Oh yeah, that new one. Yeah.
If I just need like someone to dumb this down for me, and I'm not great when it's super high fantasy to the point where like my brain starts to break. So like I would need somebody like that to be like, this is what's happening. This is the world. I have librarian type friends who say they either love a book that starts with a map or they hate a book that starts with a map. I like a book that starts with a map, but if it's also a glossary of this is what we call this, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I
like the Game of Thrones, like you get into the deep lore.
Where I'm like, wait, this faction of this fairy.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends who they just call it the horny fairy book. They're fairies and they're doing battle and many other things, but I love those. I mean, I'll do a reread of those just for kicks. And actually, the woman who is the publisher of my last young adult book, so that would have been like 2021, she had been a higher up at the publishing company. She'd been the editor of Akatar books.
Wow.
And, she wasn't going to divulge too much because I was like, I'm obsessed with this book series. Like, tell me anything you can tell me. You'd think I'd want to talk about my own book. But no, I was like, tell me about her. And she did say, like, imagine if you were a writer who just lived it. Like, in her spare time, she's kind of writing fan fiction about the characters that she's created. Like, she is immersed in that world, Sarah Maas. And, like, that is, I think it's Sarah Maas. Somebody recently corrected me and said it's like Mass. Like,
I'm curious for you, the whole creative aspect, isn't it interesting? Like, do things hit you? Like, I always say, like, I'm a vessel sometimes, and then whatever it is. So I started writing because I acted growing up as a kid, very like theater. I like to joke. I look nothing like Zac Efron, but I like to joke around. So I had my Troy Bolton moment because I was like doing sports and theater at the same time. Not fun, but a lot of stereotypes, but not fun. What's it called? And I did a lot of more stuff in my younger years, but I was just hitting a threshold. And like almost a year ago now, I said, you know what? I said, I've always written. I have a big, why don't I just write my own thing? And like, so then I didn't like sit down and start writing. I just had the idea in my head. And then one day, the film I'm finishing up now, like, I'm not even joking. It just like.
When it came to you, did you have before you started writing, did you already have the ending in your head, like the whole story, or were you just kind of like going along?
When it first hit me?
Yeah.
When it first hit me, it was a concept, and I was with a really good friend. I was with a couple people, and I just like said it, and then my friend said something, which triggered something else in my brain, and I just started going boom, 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 and then I think all at once I had the whole film in my head.
Really?
After like a minute of everything like processing and logging, I was like, I need to start writing this down before I forget it. But I've never forgotten it, which is good.
I get movie and story scenes in my head. I always feel like I would be able to help somebody if they had a movie to be like, wait, let's make this.
So you'd be a great producer.
Scene. Is that what producers do? I thought they just
technically.
funded it,
I mean,
listen, and that it's great to think of a scene. And it's funny because I think one of the reasons I've never been really attracted to the idea of TV writing as opposed to film writing, even though everybody watches TV, is that like I do like an ending in my head first. And for books, like often the ending has been absolutely in my mind. It doesn't always work that way, obviously, right? But like it's for some people it's like character development and and where they land is not as important, right? Because for TV it's like you could be canceled after season 2. What are you gonna do? But the scenes I think are it's all I mean I often get a thought about an idea, fiction or otherwise, and I'm desperate for and I'll think oh, this writer should really do that. Like I remember when my mom was sick, I was in a support group for caregivers, and like the last people who have time to go to a support group for caregivers is caregivers. So we went there and we were like kind of hilariously awful to each other. I felt like we had shown up not as our best selves. But I also got the sense, like I was the only person whose parent was sick. Everybody else had a spouse that was sick, but I was kind of like, am I getting vibes from some of these people? There was something like a dramatic comedy in that support group. And I could think of 10 writers that I wished would adapt it. Adapt what I was, not myself. One out of those 10 ideas I eventually realized is something I'd like to do myself. But there was something at work the other day, I hope it's okay that I'm divulging this, from my workplace, where there's an espresso machine at the Globe, cappuccino machine, fancy coffee machine. Mm-hmm. And it turned out there was some resentment over who used it, who didn't, who knew how to use it, who felt they had access to it. The conversation about this thing, in the climate we're in, with so many real world problems, I thought this would have been a great Office episode, right? Like this is like, who's using it? Who knows how? Like somebody else should put this into a sitcom. Like this is not the important thing we're worried about, but perhaps it's because everything's going on that we are all worried about this stupid coffee machine. A lot of the time I'm thinking, who else could write this? But like every now and then I'm like, oh, I keep thinking about this because I want to write it, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. So.
And when it hits you, it's weird. It's a weird... This is gonna sound crazy. You almost get like a high. Like it's weird. Like with the film I'm finishing up now, like it was very like euphoric. I don't know how to explain it. I just was like, this needs to come out. Like whatever this is needs to come out. You know what I mean?
Stephen King, I think, is the person who said like it feels like it should already exist. I think he said something like that.
That's such a great way to put it.
Why doesn't this book already exist? Why doesn't this movie already exist? And often that means it should.
And I agree with you with the ending. I made sure, I said, this is going to have a happy ending, so help me God. Because I just was like, people need to understand. So the whole film, I mean, not to dive into everything, but it's all about the human perspective. It's all about like, sometimes our own personal happiness will come at the expense of someone else to a certain extent. I'm not saying in a dramatic way. You're not going to please everybody. You're just not. And the film takes place in the 60s. Women in politics, taking place in the South, so you can already understand there's one character has to have a whole push through it. Love, affairs, all these things, and it's like all these complicated concepts. I want people to leave the theater and literally have arguments outside. I want people to say, well, that character shouldn't have done this. I want someone to be like, well, no. If your character that you love so much didn't do that, they wouldn't have. Because that's life. Mm-hmm. People are going to have difference of opinions. And I remember when this all started coming to me, I just was like, I need to really hone in on individuality. So when you write, I find for me, when I go into certain characters, I don't know if it's different from a script or a book, but for me, when I go into certain characters, I literally have to stop sometimes and be like, okay, get into this person's head. Because I can say what I would say, but I'm like, what would this character say? How would they respond to it? So do you find yours, or are you a natural flow writer?
I mean, for me, if you're talking about fiction, that was a little bit more of a challenge because in my first draft of a fiction book, which my first book was barely fiction, it was based on a wedding I had been to. I think about how much I did not. I was probably not hiding enough, but I was at that age where I went to 1,000 weddings, and I wanted to write a tribute to guests who came alone, who the weird uncle, the bridesmaid crying in the bathroom, the guy who no one knows how he got there or how they know the couple. Maybe they're a wedding crasher. We don't know. Like, who are they,
the
right?
Mutants at Table 9
Yeah,
in
it's
the
like,
movie
what
The
is
Wedding
it?
Singer.
Like, what are exactly? How did they get there? And I really based it on one wedding. But when I wrote a first draft, I sent it to my sister, and she said, I'm on page 40, and no one has said anything yet. I had given very vivid descriptions, but I kept thinking, as a journalist, just making up what people say felt very odd, right? So it was also learning how to put two different hats on. She's like, I vividly know everything is happening, what it looks like, but it's just third person narration. I need them to talk to each other. And that was, just letting myself speak in their voices was a lesson, because it's a very different role writing fiction than my Globe work. So, now it's a lot easier with that. But the thing about the writing styles is I've noticed as I make more writer friends how wildly different we are. Like, I write out of order. I don't have any problem with that.
Oh, you do.
I think in scenes also. So if there's like there should be a scene set in this kind of place with this kind of humor or this joke, I'll write it before I forget it. I have a lot of friends who write the next page and the next page.
Yeah, that's me.
And I get it. But I don't do it that way. So in fact, sometimes I'm like, I got to interview Greta Gerwig when Little Women was coming out.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is daunting, right? How do you take Little Women and like make it your own? And she said, well, I kind of knew that like there's some things we need. Like, we need that thing where they all like fall on top of each other in front of the Christmas tree. Like, she knew the moments where we'd be mad if we didn't see it, and she'd be mad. And I loved the idea that those became these tent poles of the film. And then she could just like do her own thing around it. And I think about that a lot. I mean, that was, 5-6 years ago, right? That she did that. But I think about that. I was like, I would have never put that together as a writer, where we know we want the big breakup scene or the big whatever scene. And for some people, they go in order, like you're talking about, which is, I envy the people who can do that. And for me, I'll just be like, well, here are the 5 things I know I need. And then I'll just,
So
I'll get there.
So when you go to write a book, do you go, okay, every day I'm going to give myself, I don't know, a word quota or like a time?
Listen, for people, you have a day job. Like, my full-time writer friends have a whole process. These days, especially with just like busy Globe stuff, I'm like, well, on a Saturday, let me see what I can do. Or on a easier Friday, I'll see what I can do. I had been, when I was under contract for a book and I owed a book, then I was like, okay. I didn't do sometimes I did a word count, but usually for me it was, I'm going to get to the part of the outline that's here.
Okay.
And even if I fell short, it was, and I do think it's a good writer philosophy. Let it be terrible. It's fine. Just get it down there. Just get it on the page. Just like, you're starting with quantity, you'll get to quality. But yeah, not being under contract for a book right now is a little bit too delightful, where I'm like, I could just also watch X-Men. I could do that also.
Wow,
so it's
right here.
where I'm like, or what if, so it's, for me with a day job, you take breaks, I never went into this being like, I'm going to be a full-time book writer. I think it's very isolating, and Hollywood is weird. And like if anything like that ever sold, I'd be so excited, right? And selling a book is really exciting, but I am a day job girl. I like some consistency. So, also taking breaks is good.
It's funny you said the thing about the X-Men, because I have my younger kids into superheroes and all that stuff now, but I will get them into comic books soon. But my older kids, I got them into comic books like hardcore. Like, we were going every Saturday. We go to the comic book store. The guys knew my daughter's names. They'd go in there. They'd buy a certain amount of books. And one day, you did the whole, we did the parent-teacher conference thing. And the teacher pulls me aside and she goes, your daughter's reading comprehension is unbelievable. And I said, what do you mean? She said, we'll be reading a book, and I'll ask the kids, what do you think's going to happen next in the story? And the kids will, I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. I get to your daughter and she starts saying, well, because of the way the brother and the sister fought at the birthday party and the dad did this, whatever. She's connecting all the characters and their relationships to predict what's going to happen next. And I looked at her and I said, comic books.
Yeah. She's like, I know a narrative arc. I know foreshadowing.
Comic books.
No, it's comic books are such a good read.
It's amazing.
I'm going to a really cool event tomorrow. They're at the Box Center. They're showing a lot of films that were filmed or take place in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're showing Little Women. I'm going to see The Departed.
Okay.
I've never seen it.
That's unbelievable.
Okay.
Dude.
Then later on we can have The Departed versus The Town
I thought all these years I thought it was the Departed when I saw The Town.
Hold on. Which one?
I'm a town girl.
You're a town girl?
Here's the thing. Well, no, I can't even say the thing because you haven't seen it.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see because I'm seeing it at the Wang Theater, which is, I think, I hope all the Boston cinephiles come. I just want to be in the room with all like the Emerson film students. And I want to hear them in the middle of the thing, just like divulge.
I'm not going to ruin The Departed.
Okay.
I mean, I love all of it, but.
Well, the reason I'm a Departed guy, I love them both, by the way. It's not like Departed the Town.
I loved The Town. It was great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
But the reason I picked The Departed was because I heard how Jack Nicholson was with his character and the way he does a lot of his stuff and his whole philosophy. Who was he explaining? I forget what actor he was explaining it to, but he was like, when I have a scene, he goes, I think of a lot of different things to do, and I try and give the director options on what he could do with the scene. So he's talked about one specific scene in the movie. I'm not going to say what it was. And he said, the scene called for this much. He said, but I went here. And they thought they were going to cut at that point. He goes, but then I went here and I added this and I added this and I finally added this. And when they finally released it in the theaters, they started off here and then kind of cut to the last part. And it's like a quick, awesome, funny scene. But when I thought about that, I'm like, oh, wow. Then I started watching the movie in a whole different way. And I'm like, that movie.
See, if Michael Keaton's your Batman, that's your Joker. There you go, right? He's going to go that much further.
He's the man.
A random question before we end. Would you ever write for like SNL?
I'm not funny enough to write for
I think you're hilarious. I think you have such a witty sense of humor. This entire time you've been cracking me up.
I am not that. I'm not like a that if I have a dry sense of humor, the comic timing of SNL and stand-up people and sketch people, it's I think I'm more of a dramedy girl where it's like, oh, I went in there to be depressed and it turned out that was a little bit funny. I think that's where I sit in the. I have a friend who's a writer who is she can write a punchline out of anything, and I'm laughing hysterically, and then I'm like, okay, now we bring it back and we make it sad again. So listen, all these kinds of things. I think the best comedy has a lot of sadness and vice versa. But
oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to admit this out loud on this podcast. Do you know that Saturday Night movie that came out not so long ago?
I haven't seen it yet.
So I actually auditioned for it, and I got a call back for it, and I literally almost pooped my pants.
Which
I was
movie?
like, Saturday Night, I told you about this. Remember the John Belushi thing?
It's like the Saturday Night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was to play John Belushi.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and I saw it, and I remember I was like, I know John Belushi. I was like, wait, who's John Belushi? Right. And I remembered, I was like, oh, like the Blues Brothers guy. And then I remember whoever emailed me, probably shouldn't be saying any of this. The person who emailed me literally said, they asked me what I knew if I was a Saturday Night Live fan, because the film takes place on opening night of Saturday Night Live. Mm-hmm. It takes place the hours before the show starts. It's not like a deep dive. And they asked me how much I knew about John Belushi, and all I said was Blues Brothers, and they said, do not research anything else.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, they said, come into this blind. And I was like, okay. They sent me like this really dark, deep, like side. Yeah. And I was like, is this supposed to be a comedy? And I was like, anyways, I didn't get it, obviously. But I haven't seen the film because I was a little salty. But to be quite honest. But because like they hired a bunch of like big name people. I'm like, why are you sending this out to the general public? Anyways, I'll stop talking. But it was such an interesting thing because you're right, there is a darkness. And I later researched John Belushi had a really intense, dark past. And it was so thrown off, but I don't know why. When you said that, it triggered in my mind.
Going back to what I said before, how many comedians do you know, hilarious comedians that are like, you know what, my parents supported me, I had a great life? No. The funniest people are the ones who went through the craziest stuff or who are going through the craziest stuff.
And I think you're selling yourself short. I think you'd be a really funny sketch writer.
Listen, you should be my agent. That's good. I will say, they probably don't have this on your lineup tomorrow, but one of my favorite locally made movies. It's not a huge movie. It was called Professor Marsden and the Wonder Women, and it's about the guy who invented Wonder Woman. This brings us full circle. It's a very sexy story. It's like this guy who invented Wonder Woman, and he was also like working with lie detector test technology, like the lasso is like part of. But he lived with two women, and they were a throuple.
Wow.
And it goes into the history of Wonder Woman and also these three people, but it was filmed like right around here. I mean, it was like the old hospital. You'll be like, are they in Malden? Like, there's a lot of, I know that, Duncan. They've taken a lot of the new stuff out, but it's if you're a comic book nerd, it is a very interesting watch.
They're showing Good Will Hunting. They're showing Little Women, The Departed, Glory. I don't know why they're showing The Wizard of Oz.
All back to back to back to back?
It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why they're showing The Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz are just like, sure, why not?
Yeah, they were like, sure, why not? Yeah, but Glory, Little Woman, Good Will Hunting, The Departed, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and Legally Blonde.
Oh, Harvard. Yeah, I guess so.
Anyways.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to ask you some random questions to end this now.
Okay.
Well, what's your favorite movie, actually?
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth. Haven't seen it.
I'm sorry. It just has to. That's. It's
Most
just Labyrinth.
she's taken. All right?
Listen.
I really think there's a professional relationship developing here.
There is. You're like,
okay.
There is a shared weirdness that I enjoy.
Thank
so that's
you.
good.
Wait, what's Labyrinth about? Tell me.
You've never
I've
seen
never
Labyrinth?
You need to see Labyrinth. This is a root attraction for many women around my age. It's a Jim Henson movie. It's David Bowie.
Okay.
He is a goblin king.
Okay.
Your wife needs to see Labyrinth because if you like ACOTAR, you're into this. And it's Jennifer Connelly, one of her first roles. It might have even been her first
Got
role.
some music.
She wishes her younger brother, half brother away because he's annoying as a baby. And David Bowie takes him, and she has to go through a magical labyrinth to get to the end. And it is the fact that I watched this movie so often explains why I'm like this. It is supposedly they're going to reboot it with who just did like Robert? Is it Robert Eggers? Who did
I saw Robert Eggers.
I'm a little worried about that because I'm like The Lighthouse and Nosferatu. These movies are not sensual in the way that I feel like they should be.
And he's not. I feel like he's not. I'm sorry, Robert. He's just not camp enough to do something like Labyrinth.
You need camp. You need to try. Like, listen. If he needs notes, he can call me. I'll tell him what I need. But it's also like there's original David Bowie stuff in there that they're like, you'd be really into it. He wears very tight pants, but it's also short. Like people know how to make a 90-minute movie. It's great, but it's Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie, and they're kind of in love. So
okay. And also, is that your favorite movie or
no? My favorite movie is Transformers. But anyways,
I mean that's like the younger person equivalent. We both picked movies that are.
Yeah, listen. Michael Bay knew what was going on. Anyways, keep going.
What's something you wish you were better at?
Calming down.
Okay. Favorite quote?
I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna say Paul Simon. I think it's losing love is like a window to your heart. Everybody sees you're blown apart. The song Graceland, that quote, it's about breakups, and I think it's the best song ever written about divorce.
All right.
Wow.
And when in my job, when so many people are miserable, I'm like, losing love. It's like a window to your heart. Like how you deal with that grief tells you everything.
If you could wake up tomorrow with like a whole new skill, anything, what would it be?
Math.
Math. Okay.
Like basic math.
Mm-hmm. No, me too. I'm on the same boat as you. Yeah.
Okay. If you could time travel, you could pick to the past, to the future. Which way are you going? And do you have a specific place? Like if you go to the past, is there a specific thing or event that you want to witness? You can't alter it. So you're not going back and buying a lottery ticket, any of that stuff.
But I can just be there.
You could
like
witness the event. Yeah. It could be like a big life event. It could be a personal event to you, or you can go in the future and, see what it's going to be like down the road.
I would be a fly on the wall in the studio as the song Knew You Were Waiting for Me. Bring this back to George Michael, Aretha, the two of them singing together. Wow. Recording that song.
That's such a niche. But that's so
I mean,
true.
It feels selfish, like I should go back and stop a war or something.
No, you can't affect it. You can just witness
it.
Yeah. So you can't kill baby Hitler or anything like that.
I can't kill baby Hitler.
You have to.
Yeah. No. No. I would hear some great music being recorded.
Okay. Although now I think about it, would I go back and see what actually Hitler did? Did he kill himself or did he sneak off to Argentina, like the conspiracy. Have you heard those?
Would
conspiracy theories?
would you even want to know?
Yeah, I kind of want to know.
Yeah.
I do. There's a lot of stuff from back in the day that I want to know because you hear stories.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about like a lot of, what's the phrase? History's written by the winners or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of things where I'm like, is that really how it happened?
Mm-hmm.
My cousin has become obsessed with the JFK assassination, and I wish I could get I'm sort of like, there are some things I accept I will not know, and she has not accepted that. She's like, we're gonna know.
They are going to release the document.
Yeah, this is complicated for her. She does not like the administration, but wants those documents.
No, I want to know because there is no way on God's green earth that a bullet did like one of these things or whatever they're saying. There's no way.
Yeah.
There was multiple. So the question is, was it how many shooters? Was it a thing where now you're gonna get me into the whole?
Oh, you're one of those?
No, okay. So because one of the theories is, the firing squad theory that they say like they line up all the guys with the guns and they give one guy a blank, so that way all the guys who shoot could be like, maybe I'm the one who didn't kill the guy. So was it a bunch of shooters that all shot and they technically they're not, even they don't know if they're the ones that killed them. That's one of the there's so many theories. There's so many theories. I love them all. Anyway, what's the last question I asked you? Oh, time travel. Do you have a role model?
Yeah, my role model? Murphy Brown.
Really?
Now I'm being very Gen X-y right now. I'm talking about 80s music. I'm talking about like as a kid, like life where I was like, I'll be a journalist one day and live in an apartment. And yeah. I think about that sometimes.
That was a randomly hilarious show. That's the type of show that I could see you writing. I could see you writing like a Murphy Brown type of show.
These were formative probably in my own sense of humor, like watching shows from that era. Just like, what's funny? Who's chosen family? Like, but I think about that. And it's like a lady in a blazer, like doing her thing. Thing and bothering Dan Quayle. Yeah.
Okay. Moose, you ever see Murphy Brown?
No.
Oh, okay. It was
like a workplace comedy.
Yeah, like workplace.
But it became like a political issue.
I'm sure if I'd seen stills, I would know what it is.
Like it'd be like almost like, I don't know, maybe the equivalent of like if they were behind the scenes of 60 Minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just like she was a single woman, and the much like now, like the administration at the time was like, is she a good role model for the women of the world? And I thought she was a great role model.
There was a funny like ongoing. I'm like a fan of random scenes and ongoing things in sitcoms, and there was a random one with her where whoever her assistant was, it was always like a different person every episode. It was always like a quick, stupid little thing because she always fired them or always found something wrong with them. But it was randomly hilarious. All right, that's pretty much it. Where can we find your stuff?
Love Letters, the podcast.
Yep.
Highly recommend that. And then the Love Letters column, which is just boston.com/loveletters. And yeah, go find the Pebbles episode. It's really...
I heard it.
It's a good one.
Yeah, you got her to open up, which...
She was ready. She was ready. And I also tell you, a radio history, when she talks about being asked to pick a name, a radio name, and like, I can't imagine her being anything else.
Yeah, which now people are probably like, they'd know her before they would know the artist, before they would know the cartoon character from the Flintstone.
Yes, like she is Pebbles.
Yeah.
She's, like, even when I told friends where I was going today, they were like, and Pebbles?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the team of the two of you is also like just an iconic, like, ampersand in the middle of this. So
for years, I'd be doing appearances and people are like, where's Pebbles? And I'm like, it's a Saturday at like 3. What do you think? We live together?
Yeah, no, people I think they think that. Listen, you have these parasocial relationships with the people you love. You want to assume they hang out all the time. That's,
Yeah. All right, Moose, do you have any more questions?
No,
this has been a pleasure.
Meeting you.
It's a pleasure.
You want her email or phone number?
Was
no, listen, we'll stay in touch.
Yes.
If you ever need a draft read, I'm all...
Oh, please.
I need things before bed to listen, my romance novels amid that I can throw in a script. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.